You're listening to The Unsafe Bible with Pastor Ken Brown.
What's the one thing that a lot of folks don't believe in today? That God has spoken, and He has spoken truly. A lot of people don't believe in revelation today. And what Daniel's going to do in the course of these few chapters we're going to study is not only are we going to see revelation, but he is going to give us history in advance with such precision that the only way that naturalists can explain it is say, oh, he must have written this after it happened. But he didn't.
Have you ever tried to discern something that happened to you, but with no success? In today's message, Pastor Ken wants you to know that the only way to fully grasp the things that are happening in your life is to seek God first. If you want to experience discernment in your life and move on from the mistakes that are holding you back, give your life to God and experience His free gift of grace. He wants nothing more than to transform you from the inside out. Well, let's join Pastor Ken in the book of Daniel, chapter 2, as he begins his message, Dream a Little Dream.
Okay, we're in the book of Daniel, and I was looking at another study where a gentleman spent 2 years going through the book, so, no? Okay. I thought I'd try. Chapter 2 is an interesting chapter. The reason why we spent time studying the unseen realm and looking at everything in that, in the supernatural aspects of the Scriptures, we're going to see it in chapter 2, and it shows up in the rest of the book. It is unreal, the amount of supernatural aspect that there is in this book. Chapter 2, verses 1 to 28, Daniel and the Spin Doctors. Really? They had those then? Yeah, they did. They were called wise men, rather, and folks like that. But this is the dream. This is Nebuchadnezzar's dream, and of course, I'm going to have to give a warning on this, okay? Again, chapter 2 has in it many of the reasons I thought we needed to spend time talking about the unseen realm. It does. It just does. And here's full disclosure about chapter 2. It's got weird stuff in it, okay? Just let you know, it's got weird things in it. To fully prepare, you've got to align yourself with the worldview of a Jew of 600 BC. And that's kind of tough to do since we're not in 600 BC. But fortunately, as Solomon said, nothing's really new under the sun. Nothing's really new when you're talking to either the president or the king. It's not much different. But there is, for a Jew in 600 BC, a firm belief in the supernatural. And they really did believe that the gods were fallen divine beings. They believed that. And they also have a firm belief in who Yahweh is. Nowhere else in Scripture, except in Daniel chapter 7, this is what we're going to see in chapter 2, are we going to get a more comprehensive picture of history, world history, than anywhere else. We're going to see here history from 600 years before Christ to a date that we haven't even seen yet, the second coming of Jesus Christ. And it's all outlined in chapter 2 in pretty good detail. There are also some things listed for us in chapter 2 in the language, which is Aramaic after verse 4, that kind of start giving you, what does he mean by that? And there's certain words that are used that all of a sudden you find yourself in Genesis 6, verses 1 to 4. You find yourself back in the book of Revelation, everything, just because of some of the words that are used and the way he uses them. And Daniel did it intentionally. So, he knew, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, what he was doing. Now, and we're going to find out this evening that Nebuchadnezzar, he's the king of the most powerful country on the face of the planet. He's it. There is no one more powerful than him at this time. He's going to discover that there's a source of knowledge to which even his brightest and most experienced advisors do not have access to. They don't have it. He's going to find out that there's knowledge and information that he can't touch. And he's going to have to rely on that to figure out what the future is. So remember, Daniel and his friends started going to the University of Babylon after they got taken captive and drugged halfway across the desert to there from home, about 1,700 miles. And now they're in school. forced education, if you want to call it that. They're 14, 15 years old. They're going to this university or this educational setting, along with probably 100 or 200 other young Jews who were taken from their hometown, Jerusalem, and drugged off to Babylon. They're all of the tribe of Judah. They're all related in one way or another, more than likely. But, and one of the things we're going to have to remember as we look at this is that the way that the Babylonians reckon time, they use the reign of the king. So if the king becomes king on the second day of the fiscal year, so let's say it's the United States, so he becomes king on October 2nd or something like that, well then they don't start counting it until the next October. So that's a free year, if you want to call it that. So if Nebuchadnezzar becomes king on January 3rd, they don't start counting his reign until the next January 1st. So the reason why I say that is we're going to see a phrase here. It says in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, you're going to go, wow, he hadn't. Well, again, he could have been king by that time for up to 3 years because of the way they reckon time. So there's no measure until the next year. It's just kind of weird the way they do that. But verse 1, in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, now it could be 2 years, 11 months, 2 years, 1 month, we don't know. Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was troubled, and his sleep left him. So what we're finding out is that as the king of the most powerful country in the world, the ruler of that country, at his young age of probably in the mid-20s, is having trouble sleeping. Imagine that. He's got a huge staff. He's got an army to run. He's got people who want to kill him. And he's got all of this different intrigue going on in his court, and he can't sleep at night. Because why? He's having a dream. That's what we're seeing here. He had dreams, and his spirit was troubled. Now, again, he's in his mid-20s. Daniel was taken prisoner around 14, 15, and he and his buddies have been going to the University of Babylon for 3 years. So if we're in the second year of the reign, he's either getting ready to graduate or he's just graduated, but he's probably around 18, 19 years old, maybe. You know, he's not that old. He's still under 20. He's still a kid. Now, again, it means he and his friends are probably in their third year of school. They may not have graduated yet, or maybe they have. We don't know. Graduation could have been last week, for all we know. It doesn't tell us. The scriptures don't say. But there's this time frame that you look at and go, So there could be crossover between chapter 1 and chapter 2. But here's the thing. He's a young man of 18, and he's real low on the totem pole. I know that when I first joined the military, I thought that because I was in the service and I was young and ready to go, that I would be admitted to all the highest places, and everybody would want to talk to me. And you know what? They really don't want to when you're that 18 or 19 years old. They don't care. Go dig a ditch. Oh, yeah, we can do that. He was down on the low end of the Babylonian bureaucratic pecking order, okay? He was probably, wise guy level 1 or something like that, whatever they would call it in their structure. His dream, this dream that Nebuchadnezzar has, again, shortly after Daniel completes his studies, so close was his dream to the completion of the studies, we really, you look at it and go, maybe the Lord's in this, because his studies are done, the dream takes place, and they almost tie together. Just almost do that. So the Lord seems to be in this. Now, something else to consider is Daniel is showing us the entire process for Nebuchadnezzar. We're going to see Nebuchadnezzar as ruler of Babylon. When he conquers Jerusalem, he's the crown prince. He's going to be the ruler. And we see him as a really good pagan, okay? He worships Marduk and Baal and anybody else that's in town that needs to be worshipped. He does that. But what we're going to track through over the next few chapters is he's going to go from being an idolater to being a worshiper of Yahweh. In fact, he'll actually write a chapter of the book of Daniel himself and show how much he loves the Lord when he does it. I expect to see him there. I really do. Now, there are lessons, and what Daniel's going to show us is the process that it takes for a Gentile to become a believer in Yahweh. That's what he's going to do. There are lessons that the king has to learn, and it's Daniel's job to teach those to him. The first lesson is about revelation, not the book of Revelation, revelation in general. When God reveals something, what is it? Only God can reveal certain things. Not Baal, not Marduk, not Dagon, not any of these other false gods that he was worshiping, only Yahweh. That's it. And he's going to find that out. This is also a lesson for Daniel as well. And what Daniel's going to learn is Yahweh can even use a Gentile. It's okay. God can use anybody. If he can use me, he can use anyone. If you've studied the Old Testament and you've taken a look at the life of Jacob, if God can use Jacob, I know he can use me. The question, though, is talking again about revelation. Daniel's affirmative answer to this question constitutes a challenge to people today, because what's the one thing that a lot of folks don't believe in today? That God has spoken, and he has spoken truly. A lot of people don't believe in revelation today. And what Daniel's going to do in the course of these few chapters we're going to study is not only are we going to see revelation, but he is going to give us history in advance with such precision that the only way that naturalists can explain it is say, oh, he must have written this after it happened. But he didn't. He wrote it hundreds of years before. So it's going to be kind of tough to understand. And then he makes references to things in chapter 2 where he's talking about things that haven't even happened yet. And all of a sudden we're talking about technology, and we're going to be talking about things that are just way beyond what Daniel would ever talk about. But it's right there in some Aramaic words. And it's really kind of weird when you look at it. But at this point, again, all we know in verse 1 is Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. It alarmed him, and it kept him up at night. He did not get sleep last night. So Nebuchadnezzar is grumpy. He's grouchy. He didn't get enough sleep. And he's convinced that all of his wise guys, his wise men, are on the take because he doesn't think that they know what they're talking about. I'll show you why I think that. Verse 2, the king commanded. And notice he commanded. They weren't standing around. He commanded them to come in. And it's probably like, oh, dark 30. He says, I'm up. You guys need to be up too. Come on in. So they got the candles turned up high, some hot coffee on the back end back there. And they're going to have a meeting. So in they come. The king commands that the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans, he ordered all 4 groups, be summoned to tell the king his dreams. Now, this is not unusual. This is what they do. This is part of their job description. So they came in and stood before the king. And I just have this, every time I read that, I start envisioning the Keystone Cops and these guys rolling up and back and forth until they're finally stopped, in front of Nebuchadnezzar. I don't think that's the way they did it, but that's just kind of what I see in my mind's eye. Now, Nebuchadnezzar, remember, he grew up in the court. His daddy, Nabopolassar, was the king, and he grew up there. And he heard these guys in the past talking about what they were going to tell his dad, because he was a kid, and he did like most kids did. He hid behind them and did all this other stuff, and he overheard what they were saying. He doesn't trust them because he knows them. He's seen them lie to his dad, not once, but multiple times. Could he have overheard this conniving of these, I'm going to call them spin doctors. That's what we call them today. Today they would be the National Security Advisor, the chief of the CIA, anyway. But could he have overheard during these years these conniving guys talking about what they were going to pull on his dad? And remember, he's in his 20s. They're not. They're senior, okay, very senior. They're probably in their 60s or their 70s. It's possible he's now found himself taking power in a bureaucracy that has abuse of power and doesn't shoot straight. Does that sound familiar? Not at all. I studied Chinese history. That's the Chinese Empire. They had the same problem. It doesn't change a whole lot. It just goes from country to country to country. Again, Solomon's right. There's nothing new under the sun. It just keeps going. Now, his brain trust is actually made of 4 groups. Remember, he named them. He's commanded them to come in. The magicians, those are scholars, okay? The astrologers, and they're the stargazers, okay? The sorcerers are the mediums of the day. These are the guys who are basically, they're going to call up a ghost, or they're going to call up this spirit or that spirit, or talk to the gods, or do whatever they need to do. And if nothing else, they'll just do dope and leave everybody alone and sit in a corner, because that's what sorcerers do. They have to get themselves into an altered state of reality, and probably that's part of the problem. They were in an altered state of reality all the time. Then you have the Chaldeans. They're the wise men. These are the scholars. These are the guys who have 3 doctorates, and we've been to the University of Babylon, the University of Susa, and the University of whoever you conquered last year, King, but we've been to them. These are the guys, okay? And this is who he invited to come and say, hey, I need you to tell me about my dream. Now, again, they're older than him, probably a lot older. So here he's called them in very early in the morning, and they're all lined up in front of him, and they're all older than he is. And they're just going, what does the king want now? Kind of a thing. He didn't select him. His dad did, Nabopolassar. He's the one that did this. And this might be his way of trying to get rid of some of the frauds off the payroll. Don't know. Maybe he wants a few men closer to his own age that he wants on the payroll. Maybe he wants to get rid of some of these guys. That's just conjecture. We don't know. But it's possible because it seems like a setup. When you start reading through this, you'd say, is he setting these guys up? What's he doing? So the magicians, again, they're a group of priests in the Babylonian religious system. And they're in charge of the sacred literature of the Babylonians. The astrologers are the ones who studied the stars. Okay, they're astronomers. They're the ones who spend all their days at the top of that 7-story ziggurat in the middle of town. Ooh, look, stars. That's what they did. Okay? Now, they later were very good at this, and they were the same guys that were able to determine by looking at the stars that somebody had just been born in Bethlehem that they needed to go see. So these guys are not dummies. They really do. And Daniel, later he'll train them, so they'll learn more real stuff that they need to know. But they thought they could predict the future by studying the stars. The assistants of evil spirits, the sorcerers, they would use evil spirits to enable them to foretell the future. And then, of course, the wise men, the Chaldeans, they claimed some type of supernatural insight, but they had sound advice, and basically they were highly educated. And they were scholars and whatever. They were a little full of themselves, apparently. Whatever the case, Nebuchadnezzar called in this whole brain trust that was supposed to give him advice and guidance. And he's going to ask him a question that they've never been trained to answer. Now, they've been trained to answer questions like, I dreamed this, what does it mean? Or I did this, what does this mean? Or this dog fell down in front of me and he's dead, what does that mean? Or I was eating dinner and I opened up the goat and the goat had 2 livers. How does that happen? What does it mean? They were trained in all this. They knew how to, what does that mean? They knew what that meant. But what he's going to do is he's asking them a question, and basically he's going to prove that they're fakes, that they don't know what they're doing. So let's look at verse 3. So the king said to them, he's got them all lined up right in front of him. And he says to them, I had a dream, and my spirit's troubled to know the dream. Now, let me give you a little more background about what his throne looks like, how regal it was. Historians tell us that he may actually have had 2 live lions chained to both ends of his throne, okay? So these guys are lined up, and here's Bruce and George. They're both hungry, and they're waiting for these guys to get a little too close. Just saying, that was one of the things historically that they had. So he says, I had a dream, and the Chaldeans say to the king in Aramaic, and then when he says that, bam, this goes from Hebrew to Aramaic, just like that. The book switches language. First book of the Bible to do that, but that's where this happens in this book. Switches to Aramaic at that point. O king, live forever. Oh, good. These guys have graduated from the University of Babylon and they know how to be diplomatic. King, live forever. Your daddy didn't. You won't either, but anyway. Tell your servants the dream and we'll show the interpretation. Now, so far that seems reasonable. He says, I got a dream, don't know what. Tell us, we'll tell you. But that, again, in this culture, dreams are a serious, serious business. And these are the professional dream guys. That's what they do. This is the dream team. They've come in to answer. They passionately believe in the power of the human mind. They know they can reason this out. They've studied historical movements, economic developments, cultural shifts. They know how to give advice to the emperor. They know this. Their ancestors founded Babel, and they believed in it. They know that they can do this. Do we know anybody like that in Washington, D.C.? Just saying. Like I said, sometimes things don't change a whole lot. They were prepared to manufacture an answer based on what they thought the king would want to hear. And he may have suspected that. So here you have the 20-something king asking a room full of very senior advisors a question. And so far it seems pretty reasonable until you get to verse 5. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the wise guys, the word from me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation. Wait a minute. He wants us to tell him the dream and what it means. Okay. You shall, and it gets better. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you shall be torn limb from limb, and your houses shall be laid in ruins. And by the way, as the Babylonian king, he had the power to do that. He was an absolute, complete, total despot. Okay? But if you show the dream and its interpretation, you'll receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore, show me the dream and its interpretation. Now, again, dreams are a really big deal to your typical Middle Eastern king. I mean, it's such a big deal that the Chaldeans actually wrote manuals on how to interpret dreams. I've actually read a couple of these. They're really, when I said how to interpret when you're eating dinner and you open a goat that has 2 livers, they actually have an answer for that. It means things won't go well for you, king. It has 2 livers. You don't have 2. Weird stuff like that, but that's what they actually had in there. The Chaldean dream manuals, and we've found several of them so far, consist of historical dreams and the events that followed them, and they're arranged systematically and indexed so that you can find if the king says, I dreamt of this. Oh, yeah, that's back here in this dream. We can hear it. This is what it means, king. So they can find it. They can literally manufacture an answer by finding, okay, you dreamt this. You were naked in front of a field of sheep, and you fell, and they've got all that. They've got all that in the book. It's arranged systematically. It's indexed. We've actually found these. And these books had tried to cover every possible eventuality, and as a result, they were huge. They were long, big books. Only an expert could find his way through these things. And even he had to know the dream to begin with before he could even start searching. And this king just said, tell me the dream. Now, dreams were usually received spontaneously, and on occasion people desired communication from the divine realm could seek a dream to experience it and hear from God. This term is called incubation. Okay, it's an incubation dream. Usually the king would want one of those. He would sleep in a sacred space, and he'd kind of want to have a dream that say, yeah, go invade Greece. Okay, that's what he's dreaming for. It's a prophetic dream. This is the way they did it. They would dream in a special place to try and get a certain answer. He didn't do that. He was just sleeping. So he didn't go to a sacred space. He didn't have a prophetic dream. He didn't talk to anybody. But the majority of the dreams just simply came to people in the normal course of their life, okay? And that's what happened here. They didn't speak to a God. They just believed, though, that the gods were communicating through the symbols of the dream. They always believed that. And that's why he's kind of concerned about what he dreamed. So they desire interpretation of these symbols. This demand results in an accumulation, again, of these huge books about dreams. And they had them in Mesopotamia, especially in Babylon. We found them. They're also in Egypt. So you can read it in cuneiform if you want, or you can read it in hieroglyphics. It just depends upon what you want to do. You can also find other nice, wise stuff in the Egyptian language, like the cure for baldness is applying the fat of a hippo to the area that you want to grow hair. I'm not going to do it, okay? But that is in one of their books. And Moses didn't put any of that in the Word. It shows you goofy stuff that shows up in the world, and then God takes over, and it's not goofy stuff. It's what God's Word is. So imagine this. These guys are ready to go. Oh, you got a dream? Great. Out come the books. They've got these stacks of charts and graphs and everything else. They've got their PowerPoint lined up. They're ready to start talking to the king. Okay, we're ready to do this. Tell us the dream.
You've been listening to The Unsafe Bible with Pastor Ken. The series Pastor Ken's been teaching through is the prophetic book of Daniel. It's a fascinating glimpse into things that were predicted to happen in the future. Daniel was one of the upright men of character that God trusted to see what was ahead. It wasn't always something that Daniel was able to grasp. In fact, some of the visions he saw made him sick. When you think about the future and what's been predicted, can you imagine having a lens into that? It might be rather terrifying to see all the ways mankind gets in his own way, and how every culture ultimately comes to destruction. But this isn't where the story ends. God entrusted Daniel with these visions so there would be a visible and noticeable end to the current situation of the world. God promised a new king would come and make things right, restoring the world in a new way. If you like what you heard today but need some additional direction or understanding on this, go to theunsafebible.com and click on the Connect tab. You can submit a Connect card, and then someone can get in touch with you and try to help answer those questions you have. If you're in the Jupiter, Florida area, we want to invite you to meet with us in person. Find more details on our website, theunsafebible.com. In the meantime, you can find more messages from this series in Daniel by looking under the Media tab at theunsafebible.com. Pastor Ken has more to share from this book next time, here on The Unsafe Bible.